Back there, we ready to go? Okay. Okay, it is Monday, November 16th, and I'll call to order the MUD meeting number 1. It is, we have a quorum of the board here with all of the directors present. I'll call the meeting to order at 6:32. Citizens' comments. Before we get to that, a word about the masks. I know we've all been asking about it. I'm going to wear mine when I'm not talking. So however you feel comfortable doing that, but we'll try to be respectful of everybody in the room. Citizens' comments. An opportunity for citizens to address the board on any matter, whether or not it is posted on the agenda. The board is not permitted to take action on or discuss any of the comments made to the board at this time concerning an item not listed on the agenda. The board will hear the comments on specific agenda items prior to the board addressing those items. You may speak up to 4 minutes or the time limit determined by the president or presiding officer. To speak during this item, you must complete the speaker's form that includes the topics of your statement. Citizens' comments should be limited to matters over which the board has authority. Lori, any citizens' comments? No. Okay, thank you. Item 1, reports and updates. Item 1, staff reports, capital improvement projects, water operation report, wastewater systems reports, and finance reports. We've all gotten the package. Any questions from the board on any of the items that up for discussion?
I have a few things I'd like to provide input on for you.
Go ahead, Alan.
On the capital improvement projects, I know that everyone has been seeing the emails that I send on a weekly basis letting you know the status. Is that better? Let me scoot in a little bit. Letting everyone know the status of the wastewater treatment plant project. My anticipation of information that we can discuss in closed session. Hopefully we'll get some information next month. Currently we have the crane tested. Everything is in full operation. Staff used it last week, so we're moving in the right direction. We have sat down with the contractor and working with the consultants themselves. I'm waiting for the reports that were sent from CPNY. Let me back up. We received the reports from Weber Cadagua. WJE is reviewing them and going to give their recommendations to us on how they think we should proceed. We'll get that information and give it to CPNY since they are the engineer of record. And then hopefully we can sit down with the contractor and determine any liquidated damages, any closeout documents, and bring that information back to the board next month. Also on the waterline interconnect project, we've got 2 remaining parcels. Tony's been assisting us and working with the attorney directly to address any comments. We're still working with that individual, and hopefully this next meeting we can bring some information back to you all that we've got documentation signed and can move forward with advertising that project as well.
Alan, when you said you get 2 you're waiting for, you said an individual, so.
2 parcels, but they are the same entity that owns them. It's the hospital.
Okay.
Also, another thing I'd like to add is under finance reports, we do not have a variance report in there this month. The reason for that is because we changed our internal processes for purchase orders. And when you do that, it gives you a false positive in a sense. So if you look at some of the line items, it may show you that we're 90% expended for the year, but that's untrue because what we've done is we've encumbered the money for a blanket PO that the staff will utilize through the rest of the year. So we didn't provide that because we didn't want to give you a false sense that we've overspent the budget. We're going to look at trying to come up with a better way to provide that information to you moving forward, but I just want to make everybody aware that that was not in there this month.
And it's only 1 month, right? I mean, it's only the month of October, right?
Correct.
So
8.33% of the budget,
exactly.
technically.
Right, okay.
That's it.
Any other questions? Mr. Rose?
I did notice not only the variance was missing, but when I went through the line items, I saw some that showed a total expenditure of 110%. So that was an interesting discovery, but But there's something in this particular packet that I really appreciate, and that's the capital project balances that were added, that was something new. I really appreciate that on page 24 and 25, because that really gives you a good sense of where things are at.
One thing I'd like to add to that later on is a percentage. So if we have a project, we're going to show what the status is. So something like the water line interconnect, we can just show a rolling percentage. And this is some of the things that maybe I'm providing in a weekly update now. We can roll it over into the monthly format, provide you the same information, it's just more formal and in a better presentation than a weekly email from me.
Yeah, I like this. That's good.
More questions, comments? Okay. Thank you, Alan. Consent agenda. All matters listed on the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the Board of Directors and will be enacted by one motion. There will not be a separate discussion of these items. If the discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and it will be considered separately. Item 2, consent agenda. Consider an act to approve the consent agenda. A, October combined financials. B, September 21, 2020 regular meeting minutes amended. C, October 19, 2020 regular meeting minutes. And D, appointment to Fort Worth Wholesale Advisory Committee. Mr. Rose.
I move to approve the consent items A through D, noting that item B is as amended at the dais, and the amendment was removing the term amended.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Rose. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
A motion by Director Rose, seconded by Director Castonguay, as listed in item 2, with B being slightly amended, that was amended at the dais.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a second. We have a motion. We have a second. All those in favor, show your hands. It is unanimous. Executive session. Deliberations pursuant to section 551.074, A as in alpha 1 of the Texas Open Meeting Act regarding appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of public officer or employee, a general manager review. It is 6:39, and we will enter into executive session. Okay. 7:30, we're coming out of executive session and back into regular session. There were no items to bring forward out of executive sessions, no decisions made. Regular session, item 4, consider and act on matters deliberated in executive session. As just said, there were no outcomes to that. 5, presentation of service award to Director Wilson by Mr. Flynn. So, Mr. Wilson. Let me first say a few words about Greg, and I encourage anybody else to jump in as well. So Greg was elected to the board, the MUD board, May 17th, 2016, at the election. He was sworn in on May 18th. Greg was nominated by the board in the role of vice president in June of 2016 and began in June of 2017. Greg was nominated to serve as president May of 18 and again in June of 19, and did so until May of this year, 2020. You know, personally, I value, Greg, everything you've done for this board. You are a professional. You were a great ambassador for the MUD, not only in group settings like this or at MUD meetings, but anytime I saw you in public, you were an advocate for the MUD, and that was something that was sorely needed, is always needed. So I appreciate that from you. We all know that Greg's going to be transitioning officially tomorrow, right, to town council, and I can't tell you what a great asset you're going to be to town council. So personally, Greg, thanks for everything you've done for me. You know, as a rookie coming on board a couple years ago, You kind of took me under your wing, guided me, and I think Kelly and certainly Mark would say the same. But thank you so much for everything you've done for this MUD and for me personally.
Well, I think Greg, we talked about this at the last meeting, and so I'll just go ahead and sum it up. I hope you enjoy your time in the big house. Twice the meetings, half the pay. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. And we'll work together in the future.
I'm sure we will.
I appreciate all you did and all you helped us newbies, and wish you well at the council. You'll need it.
I have nothing to say.
You got nothing to say. All right.
We should let Mr. Corbett get his last zing in, considering
Mr.
this will be the
Corbett
last
is
time.
welcome to weigh in for anything he would like to say.
Considering all the abuse he's taken.
No, it's been a pleasure, Greg, and I enjoyed it a lot. We had a lot of friendly banter, but we both were trying to do the best we can, and I really enjoyed it and wish you success. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we have something on behalf of not only the board, but certainly staff. Gregory Wilson, Board of Directors 2016 through 2020. Thank you for your dedication and public service. So if I may, we'll get a few pictures soon. Yeah, please. Come on, golf applause.
I want a better background.
We need a
Get a better
better
background.
Right up here?
Can we get a better photographer?
I was going to say, can we get a better subject, but I guess. Okay? Thank you very much. Why don't you say a few words if you feel inclined to do so? And here, this is, don't forget your expensive box as well.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much. When 4 years ago when we came on the board, it was, I'd say, in turmoil, and I'm happy that we were able to get the board out of the news. Unfortunately, the board was in the news cycle on a nightly basis. A lot of hard work, a lot of hard decisions, a lot of long nights and early mornings. But I think the board now is in a much better place than it was 4 years ago. I can't say that I did it by myself. Bill Rose and I have spent a lot of time working on various things, and we didn't always agree, but he was always a great partner in working together to try to solve some issues. And then had the new board members come on, and you guys kind of stepped in and immediately went to work, and I think we made it a great board. I think we, as I mentioned, we got out of the news, we achieved a lot, and I think the board is in a great place and in great hands. I honestly would not have felt comfortable moving off the board had I not felt that the group that was here would be able to take it and continue the progress that was being made. So I want to thank you guys for always being so great to work with. Thank Tony for being the butt of a lot of my jokes. But no, he's been a great attorney. I think overall we have great staff. One of the best hires we made was bringing Stephen on. He's been great. Lori and Mike were already here. Alan has been absolutely wonderful. So I'm sure you guys will go on to do great things. And if not, I'll see you once a month to tell you about it.
Thank you, Greg, appreciate it. All right, item 6, moving on, consider and take appropriate action regarding the election matters. A, approve Order 2020-116, canvassing the election returns and declaring the results of the November 3rd, 2020 general election. And B, administer the oath of office, approve statement of the officers, and director bonds, and take other such actions as necessary for the directors to qualify for office. I think at this point, Ms. Lori, I'm turning it over to you, correct?
So the canvassing results were, I received the last results from Denton County last night, and they are attached to an updated, to the order, and it's passed out. And for place line for part one, we received 1,753, that's why, 1,753 total votes. Tori Stevens Bonte received 1,214. David Stout received 1,220, and for place two, Bill received 5,555. And we have a blanket surety bond with the Hartford Casualty Company for the Board of Directors, and they're updating the director information with the November 3rd election results.
Okay. Questions, comments? Congratulations, certainly Kevin and Bill. Well done. You ran a great race. All right. So at this point in time, I guess, Greg, we are officially going to make the transition. Larry, is there anything
You need to-
sign
you
or
need
do
to
at
ki-
this point in time?
Wait,
You need to make a motion.
make a
and
motion
approve
on canvas.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
We can't have Kevin riding dirty.
it. I would feel guilty if I made a
You feel
motion and I
guilty?
was in the
Okay,
election.
Someone else like to make a motion? Mark, Kelly?
I feel guilty if I made a motion to approve.
I make a, excuse me, I make a motion to approve Order 2020-1116 to accept the canvassing of the election returns and declaring the results of the November 3rd, 2020 general election.
Okay, second?
I'll second it.
Greg seconds it, so motion by Vice President Chapman, approving Order 2020-116, canvassing the election and returns, declaring the results of the November 3rd general election. Again, that was seconded by Director Wilson. Discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. It is unanimous. Okay? Thank you, Greg. And I guess at this time, Mr. Carr, you're going to join us up here. Thank you, Greg. You're going to swear him in from there? Okay. When he's, yeah, okay. So we'll wait 1 second here.
Hey, Lori, this is locked up on me. Requires a password.
Bud,
Mud?
You go.
you're welcome.
Thanks for warming up the chair, Greg.
Anything I can do to help.
Kevin already provided his statement.
His name needed to be switched out.
As well. Put it right here.
Need wheels on your table.
Would you like me to sign the oath also? Requires notary?
Yes.
Okay.
You want to keep it while we read? Sure. Okay. Kevin, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So you guys can raise your right hand and just read after me. In the name and by the authority of the state of Texas, I state your name.
Kevin
Paul
Carr.
Rose.
Do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of Director of Trophy Club Municipal Utility District Number 1 of the state of Texas, and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and the laws of the United States and of this state, so help me God.
Like me to read that?
Yes,
Okay, I will. I, Bill Rose, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of Director, Place 2 of Trophy Club Municipal Utility District Number 1 of the state of Texas, and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and of this state, so help me God.
I, Kevin Carr, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of Director, Place 1 of Trophy Club Municipal Utility District Number 1 of the state of Texas, and will do the best of my ability to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and this state, so help me God.
Okay, anything else procedurally, Ms. Laurie?
I would just recommend that the board have a motion to approve the oath of office, statement of officer, and director bond coverage, and find that the two candidates are qualified to assume the duties of director.
Okay, I will make that motion to approve the two officers, Director Rose, Director Carr, to assume the offices of, as directors. And was there anything else, Tony, you said?
That they are,
That they are
that they're qualified to
fully
assume the-
qualified to assume the office of Director of MUD 1.
I'll second.
We have a second, so you heard the motion with a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand.
I think I can vote on that.
It is unanimous. Thank you. Laura, you need anything else procedurally at this point?
No.
All right, let's take a second then. Item 7, receive introductory comments from board directors. Obviously, both have been on the MUD board before, but Bill, why don't we start with you and then Kevin after that?
I was going to let Place 1 lead.
Okay, fine. Kevin, any comments about returning to the board?
I'm back.
He's back. Okay.
I really didn't do, anything. I just took a couple years off, take a break. I feel I have a lot of good things to, bring to the table, and look forward to working with everyone.
Okay, thank you.
As Director Wilson, prior President Wilson said, we made a lot of accomplishments in the last 4 years. I basically tried to work around trying to be honest, transparent, and fair in all of my dealings. I think that worked out well. Looking forward, I'll make this short because of COVID. Looking forward, I want to start by thanking the 5,555 voters that found their way all the way to the end in what my case was a 4-page ballot, to the guy at the bottom who was unopposed and decided to say that he'd done a good job in the last 4 years and giving him a shot at the next 4. Looking forward, I do have some goals for the district, some things I'd like to see accomplished. It will take both board and staff support to do those. The district has been a superior water district for a number of years. A few years back, they put another chance to advance out there, and it's called an outstanding water district. I would like us to seriously look at doing what's necessary to become an outstanding water district. In a lot of cases, I think it's just a case of being recognized for what we already do, trying to operate under a gold standard. I would like to see us do vision, mission, goals, and objectives to align the board and the employees and the water district, the MUD as a whole moving forward. On the finance side, I've been talking with Stephen for about a year now, looking for GFOA budgeting awards. I think that's something that we're probably quite capable of getting. We've made significant improvements in the finance area, or he has, over the last few years, and I think that those can be recognized through the award. I'd also like us, under that same government finance officer's umbrella, I think we could look at a CAFR and also PAFR, two other types of awards that they put out. Another award I think we can probably get, Secretary of State, it's been a while since I've checked, but they used to do a transparency award, which talked about the finance side and how transparent your finance side was for your customers. And I think just the fact that our budget has our checking account in it probably fills the major requirement to get that transparency award. So I'd like to see the organization recognized for its positive achievements. Other than that, looking forward to working with the group, moving forward for the next 4 years, and doing those things which are in the best interests of our customers. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Hey, Greg, would you mind coming back in for a moment? Both Gregs. Greg Lamont, actually, we're going to move on to the regular items on the agenda, but I wanted to take a minute to recognize Mayor-elect Fleury and Council-elect Lamont for joining us tonight. Thank you. I know you guys have a lot to do. Your support of this MUD means a lot to me, and I hope the rest of the board. We look forward to working with you both as we look at some of the joint issues that concern both the MUD and the town going forward. So thank you both for coming. Really appreciate it.
We're gonna steal this one now.
Okay. Good. Take him. We don't want him. He's done. All right. Moving on. Item 8, consider an act regarding approval of employee health and ancillary benefits for the calendar year beginning January 1, 2021 and ending December 31st, 2021, and authorize general manager to execute the necessary documents to implement to the board. Alan, are you taking this one on?
Yes, let me get started here, please. So, we have, every year, we have our broker go out and review our insurance benefits to determine the best cost and benefits package that we can receive as far as our employees go. We did go out and request bids. We had some bids come in from Blue Cross Blue Shield. There was a small percentage of savings, but it was not favorable to the staff to change insurance providers. The current provider provides a lot of benefit to staff with the doctors that are currently a part of it. And so we decided that we wanted to stay with the current United Healthcare program. We also went out to bid for our ancillary benefits, for our dental and vision, and we had some quotes that came in that were less, but again, it was not in a large enough amount to make it comfortable for us to change providers. So each one of you has a handout, this handout right here. I would like for you all to take a look at that with me, please. So what we have here, at the very top, you have a line that is our current grand total cost for benefits for the district employees. The second line is assuming that the board approves our current standard plan as the base plan, we will have a 0.87% increase overall for the year.
So that's the difference between the 290 and the 304?
Yes, 4.87%. We also have a scenario 2 that we provided because I'm told that in the past, the district has wanted to try to increase the benefits package for employees to the highest level possible or available. And so we also provided this to you to take a look at. If you all decided to go with scenario 2, that would be an overall percentage increase of 18.35%. So we currently have in the FY21 budget an 18.90% increase. So either option you decide to choose, we can cover those costs currently. So below you will see that we've added a third plan option this year. The first green highlighted area is our current base plan. Currently we have the standard base plan and we have a buy-up plan. What we've added in here is a buy-down plan, and what that does is it allows more flexibility for staff who have families to be able to add or potentially add dependents onto their health care plan without potentially decreasing their salaries. The one below that is option number 2, which would take the scenario 2 standard 1,500 and make that the base option, and then provide 2 other options for employees to choose from.
Is there any way to anticipate who may, of the employees, and I understand you haven't pitched it yet, but what's your gut tell you about the buy-down options on either scenario? Are you getting feedback that that's something that
We haven't presented this to any staff yet. There is a potential that we have more people add dependent coverages. So there is a potential that the overall out-of-pocket expense for the district could go up more than the 18.35%.
And
it's
how could we forecast that? How would we?
The only way that we could forecast it would be to present this to the employees, let them see what their options are, and see what kind of response we get from the employees themselves. When do we have to have these benefits determined and approved?
Open enrollment in the first part of December, everything has to go by basically mid-December.
Okay. Okay.
So, I'll use the wrong terminology. Worst case scenario is not 18.35. It could be more.
That's correct, depending on who decides to add dependents at a different level. We may have someone that currently only has themselves covered under the plan, but if the standard base is increased, they may see a decrease in their out-of-pocket expenses to the point where they could afford to add their family onto the plan. That's the intent, is just to provide more flexibility for the staff.
Can I say something? Sure.
Yes, sir.
I think we need to get feedback from the staff, get hard numbers rather than numbers that can go up or down, so we know what we're voting on, and see who's going to buy in, who's going to add dependents. We just need a firm number so we know what dollar we're voting on as far as increases.
Yeah, that was kind of, Kevin, why I asked the question, because what's the unknown,
Right now, if you don't mind saying, right now, I've got, these are actually real numbers that everybody that has family now. At any one time, anybody can drop it. I have an employee that just dropped their family. You have the willingness at the open enrollment to do what you need to do. As far as picking up, it really didn't come down to if a employee wants to look at the scenarios that they have, and what the options that they have, it might come down to what they can afford. So it might come down to what they can afford. So without presenting all these options and saying we have a possibility to go this direction, it's almost like, maybe presenting a carrot that they can't actually have if we don't go the direction, if that makes sense, if I'm saying the right way.
It does. It's kind of a catch-22. If the concern is that it could exceed the 18.35, which is kind of the max of where, Alan, if I heard you correctly, we're budgeted at. So if there's a concern about it could exceed that, by what number or how much is one issue, but you don't know that until you go out and talk to them. But how can you go out and talk to them if you don't give them options?
And that's why we presented these options. If we wanted to stay with our current standard and provide them a buy up and a buy down, we can also go that route too, because it is a catch-22.
And we do have a vacant position that, anytime we have vacant positions, we automatically budget as family, just to say that's a worst-case scenario, which would be the most cost for the district.
Well, my feeling is we shouldn't rush it. I mean, we have time that they can come up with good numbers, that we can put the plan in place.
I think the potential concern with that is that if we present this to staff and they say, well, then yes, I would like to go to the scenario 2 buy down to add my family on, and then we see that we can't afford it, or the district or the directors decide that they don't want to go that direction, it's kind of a letdown to the employees as well. So we have to be careful with how we present it.
Yeah, Bill?
Trying to understand exactly what the benefits to the employees under the options that are presented. So I'm underneath the first set of solid squares and under the green where we're talking about the P1500, 3060E, et cetera. So can you tell me which one of those is is there one of those that we currently have? And
The P3000 is our current standard plan.
the center one,
Yes, sir.
okay? And so the discussion is moving left and moving right, correct?
Yes,
So moving left increases the annual deductible. Is that right? Or moving left decreases the annual deductible?
moving left decreases the deductible.
Decreases the deductible.
Moving right, it
Means
goes,
that you increases the deductible.
it
You would have out
increases
of
it,
pocket.
and it goes to an 80-20 co-insurance setup. But it is extremely less amount taken out of employees' check for family coverage.
What, I noticed that your staff recommendation is scenario 2. Help us understand that rationale. Why are you recommending that?
If as employees, we had a say-so and we could afford it, that would be optimal for staff. But again, it's a budgeting decision. Because this would provide everyone in the district a $1,500 base plan, $1,500 deductible base plan. And so that is most optimum for employees to have. It also, by having 2 separate buy-down scenarios, as you can see on the far bottom right, by going to a buy-down scenario, you have someone potentially that's making $45,000 a year could have 92.11% of their dependent coverage taken care of and covered by the district, which is a huge benefit.
Well, I guess I'm with Kevin a little bit in that unless we decide as a board to go with option 1, which is kind of carryover, right? Then it's still dependent on the employees to choose, do they want to buy up, buy down? But all of that is easily within the relative budget.
Correct.
That's an easier decision than if you tried to roll the dice on scenario 2. And to Kevin's point, what are we signing up for? You don't know.
That's correct.
And the timing of it all, while we have time, it's still a matter of how do you present something that might not be an option to begin with.
That's correct. In the scenario 2, again, it was based off of previous conversations with the board and staff and their long-term goals to have a better or lower deductible plan, be the base. That was the intent of that. But you're exactly right. If you stay with the standard plan, we can definitely keep that within budget and proceed forward with it with ease.
Mark, Kelly, you guys have commentary? Bill?
Well, I have traditionally felt that the amount of annual deductible is a critical item for employees who are not highly compensated, let me put it that way. So that becomes a more critical item, a larger hit for somebody that's new into the organization. So for that reason, my inclination is moving down, and I would guess that there's not something between 1,500 and 3,000 that's offered. So that would be the next one down. I mean, when you look at a max out of pocket of $7,900 for somebody that's making $35,000 a year, that's a huge number. And I don't know exactly where the median salary range is once I break the management structure, once I get down into the real field type or staff, staff salary ranges. And those are the ones that, the people that I'm concerned about. So for that inclination, I'm inclined to move down to the P1500. But I understand the concern is that it may exceed the 18.9% that we have budgeted in the budget. And I don't know of a way offhand to restrict that once you open that gate?
What's our timing again? When does this all have to be done? Help us understand that, Stephen.
So we'll need to do open enrollment, which is when everybody gets all the paperwork together to send over to the broker. We'll have a one-day open enrollment staff meeting here to go over all the benefits with everybody and give them, usually the employees will take the information with them. They'll take it to their spouse or, something other. They'll review it for a week, bring it back to me with all the, whatever they want to do, adjustments or keep it the same, and then we submit that over to them. Takes about 2
When's the
weeks.
end date, I guess is what I'm getting. When do,
We have to have this done by UHC a week before, basically the week of Christmas. It has to be done because they need a week for the UHC side. So if we give the employees a week, that's why we do open enrollment the 1st of December. So it gives them time to get it back to me and then gives the broker time to get the paperwork filled out and send it over to UHC. Now, do take into consideration if an employee does do a buy-down program, it's going to reduce the percentage also because then it reduces the cost for the district as a buy-down program. It's going to be hard for me to guess if we offer 2 different buy-downs, who would take the advantage of taking the buy-down to pay less, which then costs the district less, who might change from a child or just a spouse to a family. I mean, these things are up to the employee to decide what they want to do, and usually they take the time to decide based on what percentages in front of them, what the cost is going to be after they, allocate everything, so.
so I guess, my thoughts are I'm not opposed to scenario 2 in concept. What I am uncomfortable with is not the unknown. What are we signing up for, to Kevin's point? Is there a way around that? How do, and the bigger question of how do you present something that the board might not ultimately approve anyway? So I guess I'm looking for ideas from you two.
Every year, there's always an unknown when it comes to benefits. All we can do is with the increases and compare it from what it is today as in what it is going to be tomorrow. That's all we can do is compare the rates.
I agree, there's always an unknown, but in this case, we're jumping to another level and the unknown. So it's a little bit more complicated. Our risk is greater, if you will, because, we're talking about going from the base plan that we have, which is going to increase according to your numbers, right? Medical expense goes up every year. It's just a fact of life. The concern is going to that next level with the unknown.
I would also say that when you look at the rates, and we're trying to come up with some sort of number, if you look at you see the black columns underneath, or right above scenario 1 that's highlighted in green. You can see on the far right, you can see that the employee's cost is $701.63. If that employee were to be paid at the highest rate, that's $918.52. So you're looking at a couple $100 difference per employee per month. So when we're talking about a change and increase, the majority of the change and increase is what you see above with roughly $46,000. If we have a majority of employees decide to add dependents, I don't think it's going to be an exuberant amount that the budget cannot afford or the district will not be comfortable with approving.
If I can make a statement, if you had the numbers from last year's elections, how many employees took employees only, employee spouse, and that stuff, we could have taken those numbers and applied them there to see what kind of variance there would have been.
And we have those numbers and we can back them in, assuming that everybody does choose the same plan as they're currently
Yeah,
on.
I mean, there might be, someone switching because they've either had a child or something else, but if you had done that, we could have seen what, some kind of projection.
That's grand totals.
of what
That's what this is.
Grand totals at the top, that's what that
That's what I've already
includes.
done.
That's assuming no one changes plans that they're currently on.
Oh, okay.
The question in fact is if someone's going to
misunderstood.
change their plan next year to add a child or to add a family versus a spouse. I mean, these are things that are usually determined by what plans are in front of them, what the rate increase is going to be, and if they can afford it.
Okay,
But
sorry, I
another-
misunderstood. I didn't realize that had already been done.
Another thing to
and
keep
that's-
in mind too is that if you have someone that's on the 3,000 plan now and they decide to buy down, that actually saves the district money.
Okay.
It would be the employee's choice to take a higher deductible and have less expense out of their pocket monthly. It's the employee's choice. We're giving them more options than they currently have, which is 2.
So is there any way to, and I think I know the answer, but I'll ask the question anyway, if the board considered option 2 to approve at a not-to-exceed motion of X, whether that X is 343, 436, 70, there's variables. I heard that enough. But Is that something we could even consider, or is that something that we can't really roll that dice?
I don't think you can do that, and the reason I say that is because you might have the situation where the next to last person coming through the door wanted to take an action on here which would move it above the number that we had, and we would have to say, no, you can't take that option because you were the last one through the door. So
Yeah.
I don't think we can do that. I think what we're bound with here, or what we're looking at, is this, what we're currently presented is everything stays the same, everybody takes the same type of option. And the discussion is if somebody decide, rather than having a single buy down, they now have two options for buy down. If they decide to buy down, that nets money back to the district. But if they decide to expand the family option, if I understand this correct, go another way, then that increases the cost to the district.
Yeah, and again, I don't have any issue, that's the same scenario for both. I don't have any issue at all if we're selecting, or if option one was selected, because we're well within a budgeted, targeted amount. Where we really, it becomes problematic is the second scenario.
Or you go over the budget, which is,
Oh, no.
I mean, it's like, what's the exposure?
Scenario 2 was selected, and every employee made the option that was most costly to the district. Do we know what that number would be? And if that's acceptable to the board, then that's a ceiling amount, and it can only be less.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the problem with that would be is obviously not everybody can select a family or child without having a family or child to select.
Say that?
The problem is that not everybody can select a family or child without having a family or child to select. You can't just assume they're gonna have, so we'll have employees here who don't have the option to get to the family side.
But I think for conversation, he's recommending that if we just assume that everybody would qualify for the family at the highest
So those
rate.
with
Right.
families, if they chose the most comprehensive coverage and therefore the most costly to the district, under scenario 2, could we establish the ceiling amount so we know the maximum cost to the district?
Well, that's what this is. So those with family already now are choosing, if we went with scenario 2, the highest plan.
Yeah, I thought this reflected last year's choices.
So it is last year's choices. So everybody that has family right now, if we move it to scenario 2, we're using them taking the highest plan. They have the option to go back down, but I'm budgeting, or what I show up here is if they took the highest plan.
So could the district's costs exceed what you show?
Only if someone who's not elected a family now decides to pick up a family later.
Is if everybody who had a family, maybe didn't take family now,
If they did
if
so.
you showed that everybody who could,
How would I do that?
So
Would
we
each
just take
employee
the-
ask if you have a family? I mean, it's,
Well, we're trying to
Well,
determine,
their
Steve, what's
election-
our maximum exposure? What's, under scenario 2, what could the maximum exposure be?
You would take the 2892.17, you'd multiply it by 21, multiply that by 12. That would be assuming that everybody in this district could add family at the highest plan. I believe that that's what they're
well,
asking.
about 60% of the employees are employee only. So knowing what that 60%, if they have a capability of even doing that, is the question. I guess I'm confused.
We don't think it's likely, but we just want to know the feeling on that. Or-
I think that part of the answer to the question here is, do we know, or do we have a feeling for how many employees are taking coverage at an individual only who have families? Because the problem, part of the situation here is, you have two wage earners in a family, two people working, and the spouse may be taking coverage from their employer, and the employee may be taking coverage from us. And so there might not be a change there. I mean, the spouse may have coverage that doesn't allow family, but that coverage is greater than what the employee here has. So even in a situation, if you were to look and say, that person is an individual under our coverage, but we know they have a family. If we go to this, will they move to our family? Well, we don't know, because we don't know what the spouse's coverage is. I mean, even to make that determination.
Correct.
So I was looking at going and saying, well, how many people do we know have families that are not under family coverage? So we could say, well, if they move in. But we can't do that because we don't know what other coverage is in the family, and only they can answer that question.
And we can't do that because we don't keep that kind of information either.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say,
So-
I mean, it's something that's,
Yeah, so what you've presented here, I think is solid. Solid in that we understand that it duplicates the individual employee and it duplicates the coverage that the employee currently has via selection, whether it's via individual or family. That's a known. You're taking the same data set from this year to next year as far as selection. It's always a given that people may change their minds. Spouse may pick up a job that gives better coverage, and you might even drop the employee coverage on the MUD in order to put that employee with the spouse. The reverse case can happen. You're going to have a percentage of options or situations, variables, that you're not going to be able to manage, nor are you going to be able to forecast.
So,
That is another thing for the board to consider, is that when you go with that higher rate plan, there is a potential for that percentage increase annually to be higher than typical or normal.
Meaning,
Well, it's just gonna be a longer forecasted long-term expense, because instead of being 290,000 a year, it's gonna be another
yeah.
55,000 a year, or potentially.
yes.
I want to go back to Tony's question, because that's the right question. We know what the base is, according to your forecast, it's, 343, 463, 70. The question is there any way to forecast or give the board an idea, a solid number of what could the worst case scenario be if every single employee went to a different higher plan? I mean, not the higher plan. Is it another 20,000? Is it another 50,000? Is there not a way to forecast that, or?
Well, the
that
the
too
best
complicated?
way would be take the number of employees and multiply by the highest rate possible. And that's gonna be your upper limit.
Well, we would have to divide out a certain percentage, because we do know 60% of the staff are employee-only currently,
Yeah, but I'm still saying that.
and they
that
don't
would
have
come up with-
qualifying events to add
I don't know
family
if this
on.
even, I think I heard Stephen say, we don't know who has family or not.
We could speculate, but
Could we assume every one of those employees has a family and could be covered?
I think that you're looking at upwards of $700 something thousand.
But even as you look at that number, the delta, you would have to take that same piece of information, that same assumption, and lay it back onto the group that you have today in order to get a correct delta, to be apples to apples.
Yeah.
When you did the budget process, what did you all put in the pipe for medical?
The bottom row at the very top, where it says FY '21 budget, we put in
345,
345,000.
047.
That's 343. So you're basing it on going with the highlighted, the green ones?
Correct.
You made a decision at that time to go with the green choices, is that correct?
The green choices is what we came up after our broker came back to us.
And we can continue to talk all night, but I still don't like to vote on things without knowing the numbers. We don't do that on contracts, we don't do it, or we're not supposed to. It's not a good way to go about it. You should have firm numbers. And I know it's hard to get all the variables involved as far as, okay, who wants kids involved, who wants wife involved, but you need to get as close as you can. And, insurance, I'm not even going to go there, because the public administrations, they have great insurance. You go anywhere around with Obamacare and everything else, people are paying $800 or $900, over $1,000 for their families. And in admin, they're getting life insurance, medical, dental, unheard of in the business industry. So, not that they shouldn't get it, but I think we need to vote on firm numbers.
So, and kind of back to that comment from before, if we don't have firm numbers tonight, how can we get to firm numbers without putting out an expectation vis-à-vis the second scenario that we may or may not be able to approve or afford or approve.
I think,
How would the process work?
So we have a broker involved for a reason. We do not keep this on hand. This is a HR situation where we try not to get into the benefits and the life stuff and for the family there. When we do an open enrollment, they initiate what they need, it goes to the broker, they go over everything, and they put it all together for us. We can do the same thing, we can go ahead and do an open enrollment. The firm numbers is, I can compare what I know what today's data is, and that's what I use is what is today for tomorrow. At the end of the day, if everybody everybody in the district had a family, we were looking at 416,000, which is a 43.37% increase. That's if everybody had kids and spouse and family for it.
But we know that's not really, that's
That's-
worst-case scenario, but that's not a
But
realistic
it's-
worst-case scenario because of the things, because you get single.
Correct.
So-
I know employees who will not be able to take advantage of family because they don't have an option for that.
So I guess what I'm looking for is how do we move forward? I mean, it sounds like we need to table this, which I'm okay with, but I'm challenging staff, what has to happen to get us more solid numbers if we're gonna go to scenario 2? And I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you do that.
Every year when we do this, and I've been doing this for other companies too, is we can only go off of what I have here in front of me, off the data that's here in front of me. There's always the variables. If we change the rates, somebody might pick it up. If we don't change the rates, somebody might drop it more. It's going to change based on at the time when their family reviews the rates, reviews what they can afford, and moves forward with it.
so to follow up, to reiterate what Stephen's saying, if you look at the second line, if everybody stayed on the current plan currently, the second line at the top, right now we're showing that everybody involved at the same plan, signing up exactly are right now is 4.87%. But if everybody in the district decided to add their family, we could essentially turn into a 10 or 15% increase in our medical costs.
And I
out
get
of
that,
pocket.
but that's still well within our proposed budget.
That's
That,
correct.
under scenario 1, there's no real scenario under scenario 1 that this district couldn't afford. We've budgeted 345. You're not even gonna approach that number from what I'm seeing on scenario 1. It's all about scenario 2.
And unless we roll this out to staff, which it's not recommended to roll this out unless it's been approved, then option 1 sounds like it's the best.
Bill?
Okay, so looking at scenario 1 and scenario 2, and looking at the total premium difference, when we say total premium difference, are we saying difference between what they're currently paying and what they would be paying next year?
Yes,
Okay, so if we keep scenario 1, an employee only is going to have a total increase of $39.10. If we go with scenario 2 and they do the buy down, then they still have a $39.10 cost, premium difference cost, increase over what they're paying this year. That's if they do that buy down. If they don't do that buy down, as I understand it, then they're going to pay another $147. They'll pay $147 more annually.
correct.
And, okay, so if we go scenario 2, and they don't want to do, and they want to do a buy down to keep their costs the same, then they would be remaining with the 300 individual and the 600 family annual network? Is that the way this reads?
Yes,
Okay, so what we're doing is basically what we're saying to them is, we've given you another option. This other option, with these better deductibles in your favor, are gonna cost you more money. If you don't want to do the more money option, you can do scenario 2 buy down, which will give you what you currently have, but it's gonna cost you $39.10 more per year. Or you can do the scenario 2 buy down P 5,000, which would net, as I understand, net them back $111 per year.
Let me rephrase real quick. So the first one is employee only, which is 100% paid by the district. The first column is the total premium. The second column is what the employee would pay out of pocket per month. The third column is what the district pays out of pocket more per month. And then percentage of what the district is covering the full plan.
So for the, if you chose scenario 2 with 1,500 as the base, the independent coverage is what ends up being an added benefit to the employees. It decreases their costs
Okay?
annually.
But
The
an
employee will stay the same.
The employee and spouse, because we cover full employee, the employee and spouse will cost them $80.93 more. But if they do the buy-down option, if I understand this correctly, then they pay $146.04 less
Yes,
than they pay this year?
That's
correct.
Okay. All right, well, that's helpful.
I mean, to me, we're back to kind of square one, which is as I see it, we have two options.
I'm
We
trying to
either-
figure out who's on first.
Well, I know, we either vote on scenario 1 if there's a motion, and I haven't heard a motion yet, which is well within budget, even with the plus ups, plus downs, or we table this, but I'm concerned about tabling it because I don't know where we're going once we table it.
Correct.
What are you going to come back with that would get to what's our maximum exposure here for the board?
And I think it
If you
comes
don't
down
know the
to,
answer tonight, I don't know how you get to the answer unless you roll it out.
correct, and we wouldn't know the answer until the end of open enrollment. So it's one of those, if you don't want to take, if the board doesn't want to take the chance on potentially increasing that budget and doing an amendment, then you choose option 1.
Well, couldn't you find out who is going to have a spouse on the plan, or do they need to know a dollar first?
They
They're
would
gonna
need to know
the
the
dollar
dollars.
because the question is, we know who has a spouse, who has family, who has children currently today. What's gonna come down to is if they have it, if their spouse has a child on there and they're only covering, this, or however they were, if they got the coverage from their spouse is covering the children, but if it makes sense now that they can cover the full family and drop that one,
But if you put the price out there and go, okay, if you have to pay X price, would your spouse be on it? Would your kids be on it? If you go with, Y, would your spouse be on it? Would your family be on it? A simple survey. You get firm numbers. You take those numbers, you apply them to these costs, and we know if you're going to go on this plan, they're going to have a spouse and family. If you go to this plan, they're just going to have a spouse. You know what I'm saying?
I do. I mean, yeah, we can roll it to the employees. I hate to roll it out to them and then say, well, we can't afford it and we pull
I'd
it
hate to
back
vote
up.
on something that you don't know what you're voting on with the dollar amount. I mean,
Correct, and that's why the board can go ahead and choose scenario 1.
I mean, I'm inclined, we'll need a motion, but I'm inclined that there's no other way that, and I'm not as concerned about voting it tonight. I am concerned about getting the right answer whenever we vote. And whether we vote tonight, either scenario 1 or it's nothing, is from what I'm hearing, or we table it, or we don't, but then where does that put us next week, next 2 weeks, next board meeting? And we're still going to ask the same question.
I make a motion that we table it and let Steve get with the staff and get the numbers that you're satisfied with.
Anybody want to second that motion? Okay. I'd like to make a motion then that we approve scenario 1 as a board.
I'll second.
Okay? We've had a
That's
lot
the
of,
304.
I'm sorry, that's well, yes, but I wouldn't put a not to exceed number on it just because we can't do that right now because you're going to have plus ups, plus downs. But I think just leaving it open to scenario 1, we know that it's going to be around 304, but it's not going to be, a lot more or a lot less, which is well within budget.
Steve, do you have an idea of what the variable will be? 10,000?
The problem is the 60% that doesn't have a family, I don't know if they have family, if they have an option to do it. I mean, I can't say the variable would be, I can say, if we're asking if we want to add everybody to family,
I guess my view is, having scenario one, we know pretty much what the cost is gonna be with a variable up or down of a little bit that is well within budget. From my perspective, that's my comfort level. Bill?
When we talk about, and we worked hard on the budget. Let's go there.
Wait, did
When
you
I,
get
when
it?
I look at, when I look at exceeding,
She seconded, yes.
when I look at, expenditures, let's go that. Ultimately, our expenditures are paid by our customers. And we do that through our revenue stream. And from somewhere in the back of my mind, I've got a penny on 1,000 gallons of water gives me $10,000. And so when I look at this and say, if I'm up at 343 and it comes out 383, I'm 4 cents on the water. I'm 4 cents for 1,000 gallons on a water bill. Yeah, we
We have a
it could be
motion on
wrong.
the table, can we vote?
Yep, there is a motion on the table, so
Okay,
so with it, to get the commentary,
okay, so yeah, so anyway, that's what, I'm looking at the cost side of it.
so the motion on the table was option one. It was seconded by Secretary Treasurer Castingay. I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, raise your hand. It is 3.
Opposed?
Motion carries. Opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. And 1 abstain. So Kelly, we had Director Carr, Secretary Treasurer Castingay, President Flynn, support. Oppose, Director Rose. Abstain, Vice President Chapman. Staff? Okay, you know the marching orders? Item 8, consider an act regarding approval of the task order agreement with Half and Associates for professional engineering services for the district compliance with America's Water Infrastructure Act, AWIA, for completion by June 30th, 2021. Phase 1 Risk and Resiliency Assessment, RRA. Phase 2 Emergency Response Plans, ERP, at a cost of $77,200, and authorize general manager to execute necessary documents to implement board action.
Mr. President, you said agenda item 8, and it's actually agenda 9.
Thank you. Sorry, agenda item 9, as I just read.
Just briefly, this is a mandate that was provided down by the EPA back in 2018. Every water system within the United States is required to perform a risk and resiliency assessment of their system and also an emergency response plan. Ours is due by, what date here? Is it June 30th of 2021? That's for the Phase 1 Risk and Resiliency Assessment. We went ahead and brought it to y'all. This is a budgeted item. We would like to go ahead and get started on this so we can meet that deadline. Phase 2 of the Emergency Response Plan, which we currently do not have one. We've always piggybacked certain pieces of the towns. This will be due 6 months later. October, is that right? September 30th? Oh, it's December, okay, sorry.
Was this the only estimate we received?
This is from our consultant,
This
correct?
is
And I will say that at my previous job, this number is correct. I've had a few different consultants give me prices, and this is on the lower end.
I have a quick question, and maybe one of the staff will remember, or Bill might remember. When Brandon was the town manager, there's a Denton County Emergency Response. I can't remember what the name of it is. Do you remember that? He wanted us to get involved in it and pay a part. Does anyone remember? You weren't here.
They are a part of the Denton County. emergency
Is
response
this what you're
plan.
talking about, or?
No,
is
this
it-
is a separate requirement.
Okay, but there was a plan that we were, the town was trying to get MUD to pay to join up in some emergency response program. Greg, do you remember? Yeah.
There was some Homeland Security
What is it called?
requirements. Homeland Security had required all utilities to adopt some plans in response to that, but that's different than this, and that was maybe 10 years ago, it was a while back.
I knew you'd come through with that, Tony. Yeah, okay.
I don't know if that's what
Thank
you're
you.
thinking of.
Yeah,
but
that's exactly what it was, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Bill?
I have a motion. I move to approve the task order agreement with Half Associates for professional engineering services for district compliance with America's Water Infrastructure Act for completion by June 30th, 2021. Phase 1 will be the Risk and Resilience Assessment, RRA, and Phase 2 will be an Emergency Response Plans, ERP, for a cost not to exceed $77,200, and authorize the general manager to execute the necessary documents to implement.
Second.
Motion by Director Rose, seconded by Director Carr. Any further discussion? Bill?
I was reading the AWBD magazine for the quarter, found this in it, contacted the GM and said, hey, and he said, here we are working on it. Well done.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor, show your hand. It is unanimous. Item 10, consider an act to award contract number 2020-111601 for fence replacement at wastewater treatment plant as part of the fiscal year 2021 capital improvement projects, and authorize general manager to execute the necessary documents. Staff.
Directors, as part of last year's budget, y'all had approved money for, capital money, to start replacing the fence at the wastewater treatment plant. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we did the north and the west side last year. And this will complete that project, and it will replace the existing east and south side along with a new gate. 3 quotes were obtained, and Raymar Construction came in at the lowest bid at $49,478. And we'd like to proceed with this project.
Okay? Bill?
I make a motion to award contract number 2021-11-1601 to Raymar Construction for an amount not to exceed $49,478, and to authorize the general manager to execute the necessary documents. It's for purpose of completing fencing around the wastewater treatment plant.
I'll second, and I have a question.
Okay, so Director Rose had the motion, seconded by Director Carr.
And it, I'm sure it meets the standards that we have to go by as far as the height and the fencing and stuff, since they did one last year. Okay.
It's an 8-foot tall fence, yes.
Yeah, I just had to ask the question. I didn't know what they did last year.
It's a good-looking fence.
Okay, motion on the table, seconded by Director Carr. Any further discussion? All those in favor, show your hand. It is unanimous. 11, consider and take appropriate action to select 2 directors to serve as part of the Audit Committee. Turn it over to staff.
I'm going to defer to you, sir.
Yeah. As we know, annually, we have a third-party independent auditor. CLA is our auditor this year. We will need to get a subcommittee together so we can go over the draft audit, and usually we'll meet around the first part of January, and then have it ready to go for board approval in the January's board meeting.
Okay.
We
I'd like to make a
We did talk
motion.
about this morning, it would be the first week in January, correct? For a certain date.
Yeah, whatever date the subcommittee.
Okay.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to nominate Secretary Treasurer Castengay and Vice President Chapman to serve on this Audit Committee.
Nominations don't require seconds.
Okay? Nod your head.
I'm fine with it.
Okay?
Well, I do have comment. You know my restrictions, I have to kind of like do it after hours. I can't do it 9 to 5. Does that pose any problems with?
I will do anything you guys need to. We'll be flexible if you need weekends too. We'll make it work.
I'm sorry, the mask is muting you enough that I'm not hearing.
He said
Yes,
he'll
that
do
will be
whatever
fine.
it takes.
We'll be flexible.
Okay.
I didn't hear him either, and I'm sitting close.
All right. Any further discussion? Good. Thank you, both, for
Does that
volunteering.
require a vote?
All right, all those in favor, please show your hand. It is unanimous, thank you. Item 12, discussion and possible action regarding the purchase and installation of smart meters for residential customers. This was brought forth by Vice President Chapman.
Yeah, a little sticker shock. I kind of figured. The one question I would have is it all or nothing, or can we let the customer decide whether or not they want one of these?
So let's digress just a tad. So when I first came in, this question was brought to my attention about how can we improve relations with our customers and provide them the capabilities that other utilities have. And so we went through this process and said, if we assumed we replaced every endpoint in our system right now, what would the cost be and an assumed reoccurring cost? So this is where these quotes come from. The first quote is if we decided to go with a cellular option. Staff would love that, but it's more cost prohibitive. The second quote is for what's called a fixed base system, where we have multiple antenna set up around the town. It reads the same way, it's just our own infrastructure instead of going up to a tower and a cloud system. So I wanted to just provide y'all some, since I knew that you were going to be talking about this. I just came up with some scenarios so y'all could see and understand what the cost would be if we replaced all endpoints in the system. Mike, I can't remember when we looked at this before, we were trying to determine how many of the correct endpoints we had, and I can't remember what it was, 40%?
I don't remember either. I know they gave us that. I want to say it was more around 30%.
Okay, so there is a lower cost for the initial installation. So again, this is just an item for discussion, so if there's something more that you all would like to see, we can surely go back and determine what it would take to get this system in place. But the infrastructure itself, as far as the antennas, the monthly cost, that's all pretty much fixed. It would be on the second page where it talks about the Badger endpoint and connectors that are $119 and $67 a piece. Those are the numbers that would be lower.
So bottom line is, it's 50 grand more to do the second option? Am I reading that right?
Mhm.
Roughly?
Correct. But it has a lower cost over a 20-year period by roughly $839,000. That's assuming all new meters.
And it would be our infrastructure, not a cellular.
That's correct.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Mike, did we ever get done replacing all the older meters and everything in the town?
We do meter change-outs every year,
Right, so,
oldest meters and our highest usage ones,
and all of them are readable now, right?
correct?
Okay.
And all of them have the data log function now.
But you still have positive displacement meters in the ground though, correct? So when you replaced them, you replaced the head itself and the endpoint, correct?
Correct. And meters also. I mean, every year we go through, in fact, we're going through that right now again. I'm just waiting for the list to put in a big order. Like I say, we go our oldest meters and our highest used meters. Every year we replace them.
Bill?
I believe that Mud looked at this before I came on the board. If I remember right, you had, because the directors were involved, it was a change out, wasn't it? They did it, and some of the town council were involved, and
I had one.
And that was
Yeah.
the cellular option.
but if I remember that discussion, the end result that came out of it is they didn't think that there was enough use to justify the cost. If I remember, but, you know, that they themselves and how much they were using it, that was where that group come out.
That's a big
So-
determining factor is the return on your investment. If you only have 100 people looking at it a month, it's not worth your investment.
So I frankly have not seen the demand.
I was just bringing it up because we face this every year. And quite frankly, I mean, it looks like if we looked at just the infrastructure costs, forget the per meter. I mean, I think the per meter should go to the customer that wants this option. And I'm putting it as an option. If you want this, you're gonna pay to have that extra kind of meter. It looks to me like our out-of-pocket is around 60 grand. I'm just kind of thumbing it there. Those center 3 items would be a fixed cost to us. The training, starting at the training, those 3 items, the 5,500, the 54,950, and the 2280. And the rest are per meter charges per customer that wanted it. So it would cost them, basically the first 2 items about $180, and then a recurring charge on their bill for 20 cents.
Can you even do that?
I think that you could do that, but the problem is you're gonna end up spending roughly $60,000 in infrastructure that you may not have enough people sign up that actually want to utilize. It's a guessing game.
I think Mark's point is I'd rather spend 60 grand guessing than $1 million.
I'm sorry.
I said, it sounds like you'd say I'd rather spend 60 grand guessing than $1 million.
And I think we'd have to verify that you could only add in. I don't think it matters how many endpoints you have reading into the system. Once you have the infrastructure in place, it doesn't matter if you have 100,000 or 1,000. It will still operate the same.
What is the difference in cost when we replace a regular meter? You know, we're putting in those smarter meters now.
And they have these endpoints, so the meters we put in now can be migrated over to this system.
Oh, so the current meters we're putting in will work on this system?
What you see being replaced is the actual connectivity from the meter head to how we read them. So if you go with this system, you want to have every single meter read because it would eliminate our staff from having to do drive-by, and it would allow us the opportunity to be able to have live data. So if staff got a phone call about a high bill, they could pull up their account and look at live data. The individual customer could open up their phone or their computer, log in and see their data. They could receive notifications.
So what I'm getting is eventually, with the current meter replacement, we'll have all meters that will be capable of this, and it's just going to be those center 3 items that we need to put in for the infrastructure in order to make those
Correct. And part of our
meters accessible.
Part of our GIS efforts right now is having all of the meters created as a point within our GIS system, and we're going to start working on tracking them long-term to see how many we have in the system, how many have these SE endpoints that will be capable of collecting this data in the future. Once we have a harder number on that, then we could always bring it back at a later date and say, now that we know how many we need to replace, does the board want to go ahead and proceed with this, working on this? Do you want to wait a few more years? It also depends on call volume. If we have a peak in call volume, maybe we reconsider it at that time.
Do we have numbers about what percentage we've already got with the new ones versus the old ones?
I think that's the 30% number that Mike
About
and I,
30%.
roughly.
Roughly 30%.
One question is, I'll just mention it, we eliminate the drive-by, but you have to have a region or segment of Trophy Club that are all on that meter, not, have 2 or 3 or 10 or 20 that don't have it, because then you still have to go by their houses and drive by. Is that 30% in one area, or is it scattered?
No, so we usually do it in a standard area when we do our meter change outs. A lot of our older neighborhoods, older meters that, we haven't touched for, maybe 5 to 10 years, so.
Well, again, you can't have an area like, the Knolls or something and still have 30 people in there and they have the older meters, because it doesn't benefit us then.
In that you still have to do the drive-by, correct?
Yeah, the ones that don't have the meters.
Yeah.
So I think it's something good for staff and for reporting, but you have to get isolated areas or areas that all have that meter. So you reap the benefits of having the 60,000 investment.
Okay, with the 30% already done, what kind of projections that the other 60 might?
Let me make a recommendation, Mike, real quick. If we can finalize our GIS data that we're currently working on refining right now and working our way through the master plan, the water model, I think that once we get done with those two pieces of the puzzle, it'll give us a better idea of that 30% number. And I think once we have a good firm number of how many of these SE endpoints we have in the field, then we could bring it back to you with some hard firm numbers and say, here's how many we plan on replacing the remainder of the year. Here's what the delta is that we need to complete this project and add in any further infrastructure. So I would recommend maybe waiting until we get done with these efforts to provide you better data. Mike, don't you think that would probably be better?
Yeah, and we're doing a little bit of this right now. We're just not utilizing a GIS system at the moment until it is fully up and operational. But we are tracking a lot of this data right now just ourselves. So when the GIS comes online, you can all that information in there. You can tell what size the meter is, when it was installed, last time somebody went and reread it, just all the data you can put in there.
We have a lot of pieces of the puzzle moving.
Then I make a motion to table this until such time as we've got a better handle on what's, what we have with the GIS and everything else. But I will state that if the meters are already being replaced, then the big numbers on this bill are, are null and void. It's really the 3 infrastructure type numbers that we would be voting on.
Correct.
Eventually. But I make a motion to table this till such time as they have better numbers.
Second.
Second, motion to table by Vice President Chapman, seconded by Director Rose. Any further conversation? All those in favor? Unanimous. Item 13, discussion and possible action regarding expiration, renewal, and amendment of interlocal cooperation agreement for administration of fire services with the town of Trophy Club, including the following. A, authorize the Strategic Partnership Committee to engage in negotiations with the town of Trophy Club related thereto. B, appoint new member to Strategic Partnership Committee to replace former Director Greg Wilson. And C, other action related therefore to the appointment of a director.
I would have interest on being on that.
Director Rose, you brought this up. Do you want to discuss this issue?
I think that the Strategic Partnership Committee has been productive in the past, and I'd like to see that go forward. And I would like to replace Director Wilson with, or past President Wilson with President Flynn.
Okay. So we have two, motions on the table. One, huh?
2 nominations?
2 nominations, correct? So we want to have discussion about that, or? Well, how do we make the motion with 2 nominations?
You just go and vote on the people.
Okay.
You call the vote, how many for?
All right, so, Bill, you read the entire agreement there, or the entire motion, A through C. So the motion on the table is 2 possibilities. President Flynn, I'll defer to Kevin's because his was first. All those in favor of Kevin joining Bill on the committee, raise your hand. Okay, it is 1. All those in favor of President Flynn, myself, please raise your hand. Okay, it's so moved, so passes. Future agenda items. The only thing I can think of is we had talked about either in a formal setting or kind of sidebar about the possibility, and I'll throw this back to Alan, of having possibly a workshop, a January workshop, a January, February. The thinking being that we've got a new general manager, obviously. Kevin is coming back onto the board, and we never really have enough time to talk about maybe planning for the 2021 year. So I guess I'd like to put that as an agenda item, Lori, if we can, to at least talk about whether that's, makes any sense or not.
Workshop?
Yeah. Any other potential items?
I think when you talk about a workshop, I think an ideal time for a workshop, unless, and my thought about a workshop is you talk about the global situation, and that gets into my vision, mission, goals, and objectives, and I don't know whether the board's here. But the other point is, a good point for a workshop is in the budget process, so that the general manager can get an overall direction, potential projects, problem areas, that type thing, on where the board wants to go with it. And the ideal point for that would probably be after we get the report back on water and wastewater. So as far as the timing, I think it kind of depends on what you want to accomplish within it.
Fair enough. Okay, Laura, we've got that captured, so we'll bring that forth in December. Future meeting dates, last item, item 15, we are scheduled for a regular meeting on December 21st, 2020 at 6:30. Yes,
So a lot of people are planning to take that week off. I'm throwing that out there, I'm not, but, oh, we do, yeah. The board that is the week of Christmas. I'm throwing that out there. I wanted to check in with everybody and see if we maybe need to move that up to the week prior to December regular meeting. That is the week of Christmas.
Potentially the 14th or another date.
Or another date, but it
Okay.
appears there might not be an issue with the board.
personally, I don't have an issue if you wanted to move it up a week to the 14th, but that's just me.
Good with me.
It's good with me, I do believe.
I'm good.
To leave it as is?
No.
No,
we're talking
I
about
think
moving it to the
everybody's
14th.
agreeing that the 14th could work. Staff, are you okay with that?
That would be preferred.
I would have a conflict.
You'd have a
On the
conflict?
14th?
Okay.
Where are you at on the 15th?
Any of that week prior,
Can we do it Tuesday, the 15th?
Don't you have stuff on Tuesdays?
I can pass that, that's fine. 15th?
I think so. I have another one, but I think it's likely it'll be canceled, so 14th definitely doesn't work.
Okay.
15th probably does.
15th? Okay, okay,
It's fine.
all right. 15th?
You need a motion? I move to change the December meeting to the 15th.
Motion by Director Rose to move the
Same
meeting
time.
to, the next director meeting to the 15th of December. Second?
I'll second.
Second by Kelly. All those in favor, show your hand. It is approved. Okay, it is 8:55. We are adjourned.